Gentleman from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, it seems like the GSEs have exposed the fallacy of bifurcating the mission or consumer protection regulation from the safety and soundness oversight. When HUD oversaw Fannie and Freddie's affordable housing mission, and OFEO served as its safety and soundness regulator, I think the result was a $227 billion bill for the American people. And do you think that the administration is poised right now to make the same mistake by creating a consumer financial protection agency, even if it's in the Federal Reserve, or whether it's been some places have talked about it being a separate agency. Can you explain how the financial institution supervision would be, or do you think it would be more effective if there's the one regulator to focus on both consumer protection and the safety and soundness?
Congressman, very important question, and I'm glad you raised it. We are now living with the consequences of a system which for many, many decades gave bank supervisors the responsibility to write and enforce rules for consumer protection. And that system did a terrible job for the country. It did a terrible job of protecting consumers, and it did not do an adequate job of protecting safety and soundness of the banks in our country. There was failures in both those two areas. And our judgment is you're going to get better outcomes in consumer protection and better outcomes in safety and soundness if you separate those functions. We propose that. I don't know if this helps the argument, but Secretary Paulson in 2006 in his financial blueprint, 2008 maybe, proposed exactly the same basic model, which is to separate consumer protection from safety and soundness supervision with the basic judgment that that would produce better safety and soundness regulation and better consumer protection.
So you would really advocate for separating the two?
Oh, absolutely, I wouldn't. And again, I do not believe, I've heard this argument a lot from bankers and supervisors, and I do not believe it is a strong argument. Again, look at what that system produced, a colossal, devastating failure. And if you, again, let me try one simple example. Why should there be any conflict between rules designed to give consumers adequate disclosures so they can make choices of what type of mortgage product to take, and rules designed to enforce sound underwriting standards for consumers? I do not see the basis for conflict. Now, in the bill this committee passed, in recognition of that concern, there are a careful set in checks and balances against the risk that the consumer agency would somehow write rules that could imperil the stability of the financial system. But I think those jobs are better separated. President Bush and Secretary Paulson had the same view in their proposal, and I think the record of the current system supports that judgment.
Well, wasn't it that the Federal Reserve was really responsible for writing the rules and regulations?
Yeah, that's
the prudential regulation.
I think that's the point. Again, I think that you want bank supervisors worrying about risk management, about capital, about liquidity. You want them focused on those core things. You don't want them having to spend a bunch of time also having to worry about consumer protection if that job can be better done by an independent agency.
I guess I see it differently as with the GSEs and the banking industry, the consumer regulations and the other regulators was separated, and it didn't work.
Well, again, I respect that view, but in fact, the GSEs played a generally quite responsible role in what they did in establishing standardized mortgage products, and generally they held to better underwriting standards than was true of the private market. So I don't see the failures and success of the GSEs as undermining the argument for separating consumer protection from safety and soundness supervision in banks.
Does it create a duplication? What if the consumer protections decides with GSEs or with the banking industry that it's something that one way that they propose that this will protect the consumers, and then the regulator with the safety and soundness, and they're in conflict.
Well, again, they don't need, if they're at any risk of conflict, you can deal with that risk by making sure that you have a body that looks at conflict and can pass judgment on conflict. But I think it's very unlikely to be any conflict.
The gentleman from California.